good to be alive. Good to be alive. Yeah, it's good to be alive. And we all want to see you thrive. Hang on for the ride. This is Paul Vibes, bringing you a spiritual flow and information that can remedy the soul. A man for the people. Message in a bottle, but he threw it in a podcast. Now it's full throttle. Life is never hollow. But if you ever feel twisted or need to be lifted, yo, my man is gifted.
Hello everybody, Paul Vibes here. Welcome to another episode of the People's Podcast. Welcome Brandon and Kristina. How are you two today?
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes, you both have been on the podcast. Kristina, you were on the podcast recently, as you could tell everybody. And I will link to her original podcast in the description. She made this amazing, we call it Victor Vibes.
Victor Vibes.
Victor Vibes. And Brandon made this table to set. No, okay. He has a lot of skills. And
Brandon, a man of many hats.
Many hats. We were on a podcast through Zoom, right?
Yes. I think it was back in May. My first podcast ever, or at least to my recollection.
Yes, I'm glad to be the one to.
Yeah. So I
really
enjoyed it.
Very cool. We were talking. I mean, there's so much that I feel like the both of us can talk about. But before I talk more about that, you are the one that connected.
Yes.
Us two together.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you two were able to connect. Obviously, I felt as though that you both brought very good energies and a lot of harmony, so I would be remiss if I didn't connect both of you.
And I do the same for you. You're a great master networker. That's what I call you, master networker, master custom bear maker, and master vibes, they call me. Not man. We're not really meant to joke, but I really believe in my philosophy, and tell me what you guys think about this. Be a student in everything, a master in nothing. Always be open to learning and growing. And I think that's one of the things that motivated us, inspired us to do this theme of doing a podcast about networking and the life of an entrepreneur, because there's so many doors and opportunities that can open up when you network and connect. Yes. Now, obviously, a lot of your friends and people who watch this are going to know you from networking groups, but there might be a lot of people who you might reach who may know you, may not know you, and are entrepreneurs, but they're afraid to connect with others.
Right.
And Brandon, being that it's the first time in person, I want to have you start with that.
Sure.
How powerful and life-changing has networking been in your life?
Networking, I think, is extremely substantial because you really don't know who knows who, right? Mm-hmm. And a person's network is very powerful, and if you build up a good relationship with them, they will have a great inclination to introduce you to the people that they know. So networking is very powerful, and obviously, or at least one of my philosophies is to have a happy life is based on your relationships with other people. So it's extremely impactful and fundamental.
I agree, and I'm sure you probably feel similar way, right? What is when you think of networking and making connections, what comes to mind to you?
So many things, like in light of what Brandon said, but I want to add on to what you said the sense of, I think you also have to have a hustle mentality. And I think it's also in light of what you said about always learning, but being a master, acknowledging like where your strengths and your weaknesses are. And that's something like I've come to you and Brandon for. Like, for example, like when you network, you keep hearing certain themes. And I think networking is a great way. It's almost like when we were kids, like we had GAC or one of those things where you throw against the wall and see if it sticks. That's kind of what networking is you kind of, I think being an entrepreneur is you have to keep throwing it. Does it stick? Does it work? And like, for example, like a lot of people say to me, you should have your own podcast. Yeah. And your podcast is actually the first one I've ever been on. So
yes,
you were exactly. But like you said to me, hey, I can show you. So like, that's the thing is like, the more you meet people, the more you learn. And like Brandon's taught me things too. And so I think you can always learn something from everyone. And I also feel like too, when a meeting goes bad, which happens a lot, I think we both have our fair share of bad meetings, I think all three of us, I always take a walk afterwards if I can, or at least a walk later that day, and I think, okay, what did I learn? And without fail, even if it's not a good meeting, like this has been great. Brandon's connected me, second time being on with you. This is awesome. This is like the dream connection team right here. Yes. But there are a lot of times this doesn't happen. But if you take that walk around the block and you're like, okay, what went wrong? Like, what didn't click? And when you're able to pinpoint it, that's where this magic happens. So I actually find I learned the magic in like, oh, this is why I didn't connect with this person. And it actually gives you a better flag.
And it's a learning experience, right? And it's not even, I mean, you can say it's a bad, I get what you mean by that, but in a way, there's always something positive you can learn. And you take that knowledge to the next time you connect with someone. And you make new mistakes, you know?
Exactly.
And,
that's a better way to put it.
What's cool is you always got to own too, because one thing I realize in life, it's so easy for us to point the finger, oh, maybe that connection didn't go right because they're this way, they're not open-minded, or they're closed-minded. But I always find it's more constructive to start with the self, always start with the individual. So, you know, oftentimes people are very obviously wrong, they do something rude or mean, but oftentimes it's so important to look inward. Hey, what could I have done better in that exchange of information? And this relates to networking, and I'd love to hear what you think of this, Brian, but so many people are afraid of social interaction. They're afraid of rejection, or they've been hurt. You know, see, like let's say hurt people, right? Or people who are afraid of networking because they just don't connect with people if they feel like they can't connect with people because of past traumas or different things that have happened. Right. But Brandon and you, and we obviously don't have that issue. We always are networking, connecting. But we realize that we may connect with someone who's not super high energy like us, and that might want a different approach, like kind of like understand, you know, there's always different bait for the job, right? You don't want to fish with the same bait.
I like that quote, and I never heard it, and I love quotes. And getting off on a slight tangent, what Kristina said, I think we should trademark is
what?
The Dream Connection Team.
Dream Connection Team!
I love that.
That could be your own
so
segment.
much.
You heard it here. You heard it here. If you want more of our segments, let us know.
Absolutely. The Dream Connection Team. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
But what you were saying is really true. Obviously, you know, we don't know what a person has been through and their past experiences. Maybe, you know, they've been networking for quite some time, and they've just had a few bad experiences, and unfortunately they let that cloud their vision for the future in reference to networking. So they might be more hesitant. But obviously it's much easier said than done not to let your past experiences
define your present.
Yes, absolutely. So it's very important to keep an open mind, because you really don't know who you can meet if you just put yourself out there. And I think it's very important to be what's the word? Open-minded, vulnerable.
Yes.
Because with that you can easily form a more profound connection a lot more quickly.
Yes.
If you're just vulnerable.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And obviously we're very open, vulnerable individuals, but we also need to, like you said, realize that everyone has different pasts, different traumas, different things. And I think it's amazing, and I've seen you all do this. I've seen your approaches. It's not that you change who you are when you interact with other people. It's that you adapt to a lot of things. Their body language, the way they're looking, maybe their comfort level, right? If they're a little bit more nervous, you don't want to go up. I don't want to go, hey, I'm Paul Vibes. How you doing? I'm a motivational speaker. I have a podcast. Woo! They're like, you know what I'm saying? And they'll still run away. It's happened a few times. If you're out there,
I would
sorry.
run away personally.
I'm sorry. Would you love that?
I would run away personally.
But that's not my approach. But the joke is that, like, if any of us came, it's super intense with certain people. And I've learned that the hard way as someone who's very excited. Sometimes I can turn off people that way. And some people, then other people love you. And I'm sure we feel the same. Some people love us when we connect. And some people like, I can never talk to them again and I'd be okay. And that's, you can't take it personal, you know?
No, you can't. Another thing I think too, in light of what we're talking about, is that I learned to treat networking more like a sales funnel, in the sense of, and this is something that I'm finding a lot when I'm on networking meetings, is, you know, everyone's sharing and making their ask. And this actually happened to me recently, where I was trying to give someone a shout out. And I told you a little bit about this, and I won't say names, but you were actually present for it, so you know what I'm talking about. And I hired someone for the exact service that this man had, for the exact reasons he was giving. And he actually was an ideal client, in the sense that my goal for my business right now, just so people have a clear idea of like what I'm talking about, I'm focused on getting people to subscribe to my blog. Because, you know, I consider myself, a lot of people have said it to me too, you know, you're very thoughtful, you're very in tune with like what people like the monkey I designed for you, like, it's not something I would normally do without inspiration. But because I opened my mind up to like, okay, what's his logo, what's his style, you know, what does he like, you were really happy with it, and that was my goal. And so in light of that, I was like, well, I want to ask this guy right out, can I put you on my blog list? You have 2 young kids. But when I saw that click, like, oh wait, I hired someone like him for exactly what he's saying, and he missed the boat. He actually, like, first of all, he corrected me, and then he went on, he's like, yeah, people just don't know. And I'm like, dude, like, you're missing the sales funnel.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's not, like, if I go into everyone, I'm like, Paul, you have to buy this for your son.
Okay.
Like, you're going to be like, hell no, I'm going to Kmart and, like, picking up something, you know?
Exactly.
You can't do that. And I think even Brandon and I, like, we've had so many calls. And granted, and then because we developed a trust, like, you keep connecting me, and same with you. Like, even when I came on you interviewed me to be possibly on your podcast, like, I did my homework. I, like, listened to your podcast. I was like, what's his vibe? Like, what's his style? What does he do? You know, I got to know you a little bit before I first talked to you.
So what is his vibe? What is this guy all about?
Yeah, but it's important because this is your brand.
Yeah.
And it's a sign of respect as well, because if you're inviting me into your brand for a platform to share my story, like, I owe that to you.
Definitely.
And so I actually gave this example when I was talking to someone else where I was watching a video of Cindy Crawford, and I'm a little older than these guys, but Cindy Crawford to me was like the end-all be-all girl. I was a girl of the 90s. Well, she was with her daughter Kaya, and she said, do your homework. She said when you go on a shoot, you should know the photographer, you should know the editor, you should know the vibe. And to me, it makes perfect sense because we were talking about like Brandon's in commercial real estate and I worked in property development. So like we were trading like notes, and I get it. You don't walk into a bank for a loan without having your numbers. Like Absolutely. You won't. And same with like being on the podcast like yours. Like if I listened to your podcast, I know if I were you, I'd be like, who is this girl? She's not even giving me the time of day. She's not even like getting an idea of like how I vibe, like what my studio looks like, what are my colors.
And I do have to say, I have to interrupt. I love that about you, and that's something that I'm working on. Because I'm all about let me talk from the phone, go from there. But there's no right or wrong way too. I'd like to say. So your way, your flavor, your way works for you, and you're fine tuning it. And Brandon has his own way. He's always doing group emails, connecting with people. So many people, and I'm so busy. I think I need to get back to some of them. But it's like it's so cool to. And one thing I want to say for the viewers: when you get into networking, don't think there's only one way to do it. Right? You don't need to go to every networking meeting. You don't need to get everybody's card. You don't need to do this or that. Find your own style that works for you, that doesn't make you anxious, doesn't make you depressed, doesn't make you feel overwhelmed. Because oftentimes, when you go to networking meetings, depending on how the vibe is, you can be intimidated, seriously. And at moments, I felt intimidated. And then through my own development, I realized there's no need to feel intimidated. Everyone's on their own journey. And that's something I want to touch with you guys on. I want to kind of shift it to talk more about the life of an entrepreneur, which relates to networking. But it's oftentimes this journey of creating your own style, your own brand, your own vibe. It can be very intimidating because we live in a world, as you guys know, where oftentimes, not all the time, they want you to be a cookie cutter way. You go to college, you do this, you have this color hair, not blue. No, you live this way, you do that. This is how you stay in line. And I have to say, and tell me what you guys, don't you see more and more people finding their own style? They're crossing over different boundaries. Like I would never have thought in a million years. Not that there's anything wrong with making bears, but I never thought that I'd have someone like you in the podcast. I'm so glad I was open to it.
You can compliment you on that. You have a great open vibe. Like I feel like, and quick shout out for like, it's okay if I mention a podcast that's coming up, or
not let him mention anything. Of course you can.
Okay. So you share with me a clip of that veteran, and I personally was just so touched at how respectful you were, because even though it's your home, how you wore a scarf. And how you gave him the time. And I think that says a lot about you, is that you are creating a platform where, because honestly, you gave me the strength to think, oh, I can be on the podcast.
Yes.
Because originally, like, and I'll give you that credit too, Brandon's also a part of this as well, in that, because I'm listening to podcasts, and a lot of these men and women as entrepreneurs have already done their Kickstarter, and I'm not there yet. I'm working on getting there. And the fact that you both gave me that push, like, oh, talk to Paul. And you're like, yeah, I want to have you on. It was really, really great. And I think that's a tribute to you, is what makes you unique. And I'm finding more people like you, but I'm grateful that you both gave me that confidence.
And Brandon's like that too. And I want
to
ask Brandon, as someone, you're someone that you both come across as very confident, and we all have our good days and our bad days. But Brandon, speaking on the subjects of confidence and being an entrepreneur and finding your vibe, your style, as someone that's a lot, you do writing, you have a bunch of different things you do, and then also the comedy. What is your advice to like empower people to have the confidence to do things like that?
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing that up, Paul. And just to give everybody just a small helicopter view, I am a commercial real estate broker, but I do writing. I write articles on LinkedIn, and I formulated a networking group back in June, and the premise is that it's over Zoom, and I have a person who is very knowledgeable on their cultural heritage, and they will do a PowerPoint on that, and then I do breakout rooms and then round the room intros. So just really the premise is to network, but it's also to get educated, because I believe cultural awareness is very important, especially now more than ever. But going back to that with confidence, it really comes over time. I mean, I would say that it's innate, meaning that it's not learned, but I think it can be learned over time, just really depending on who you surround yourself with, right? So if you surround yourself with confident people, there will be a far greater inclination for you to be confident.
Yeah, so it rubs off on you in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just how it is. And unfortunately, I think a person's confidence gets hindered by, what other people say, and even on social media too. Not necessarily on LinkedIn, but maybe on Facebook and on Instagram. If somebody puts a negative comment, right, their confidence sort of goes down. But I just heard this quote the other day, and it went something like, that person won't pay your rent for you, so why do you let that affect you? So it's obviously much easier said than done, but it really just comes from hanging around people who bring out the best in you. You will have more confidence, and you will have a more fulfilled life, and you will do better in your
whatever you do, really.
Whatever you do in your business or whatever it is that you want to do in life, honestly.
And think about it, you wouldn't be you, and I wouldn't be me if you didn't have our confidence. If you didn't have confidence to make these beautiful, custom pieces of work, if I didn't have the confidence to have this funky room with these vibes and blue hair, and if you'd have to wear our fun swim shorts and your penguin, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And to go up and do comedy, we wouldn't be us, right? And if we were worried about what other people thought and what other people felt about us and our work, it would be crippling.
Yeah.
And what motivates me, and I think that I can always count on you to talk to you if you have a big networking meeting or a call or someone insults you or rude, whatever. Comment. We can call on each other, and I want to say that to other people. And I just thought of this now, is that if you're getting into networking and you're a little overwhelmed, find other people who, even if they don't have their business, they don't have a website, they don't even have a product, they don't even know where the hell to start. Yeah. Get a friend group that wants to go to networking groups, and that can inspire you. And I think having the confidence when they call on you to say, hey, tell us a little bit about what you want to do, you could be on it. Like, hey, I'm figuring it out. I think that's cool. I would love to talk to that person at a networking meeting. They just want to make great connections, but they don't have a business card and a website and a piece of work, but they just want to be around people, like you were saying. When you surround yourself with confident entrepreneur, people with good energy, that rubs off. But if you surround yourself with people who are, not that they're going nowhere, but they're just floating around, they're not doing things that they're passionate about, they're taking jobs that they hate, they're listening to people's advice because they don't want to be judged, they'd rather just stay in line, they're not going to have a life that's worth living. And I'm so grateful that it seems like we all have had people in our lives that pushed us to be creative.
Yeah.
Do you guys have mentors and people in your life that you feel like sharing a little bit about how they've supported you?
You are, Paul.
Aww.
Just joking. No, but no. Absolutely.
Where's the tissues?
Paul is an extremely fundamental person, because just to create a podcast, right? It's a lot more niche to hear about, especially when you walk into a networking group, right? You'll hear the financial advisor, you'll hear the attorney, you will hear the person who works at a payroll company, right? Which there's nothing wrong with people who go into those industries, because if they enjoy what they're doing, it's not going to feel like work, right?
Also, too, I like to side note, I need those people, so please keep
Yes.
doing those jobs, because
Doing
I
it.
don't do those jobs well. I would just like to say that.
Yeah.
There is a reason why I hire people for certain things. Not to interrupt you, but I just
No,
wanted to
no,
say,
no.
we do need
It's
those
true.
people.
But I get what Brandon said.
Yeah. So just to be around a person who, does something very contrarian and who's putting themselves out there and who is a public speaker, right? You're a very impactful person.
Thank you.
Obviously, and there are a few more people, but I don't want to make your ears bleed and just go down a laundry list of people, obviously.
But that's good, and I appreciate you too, like seeing how amazing you are at networking, seeing how much heart and love and soul you put into your work. It's inspiring to and like Brandon was saying and you were saying, it's like we surround ourselves with certain people for a reason. We want to support each other, but it also, you like that saying, you become like the 5 people that you're closest to, or something like that. You in a way you inherit, and it rubs up on you, the different types of personalities and things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny for me because I was thinking like that question. I'm listening to what Brandon said, so I'm trying to like formulate like where am I? And I feel like for me, I always think big picture, and that's why I like my career coach so much, because she lets me like make the mountain and then we like build the ladder of how to get up there. I think that's like a great analogy. She's really great about doing that with me. And when I think about like my dance coach Karina, very high level competitor, legend in the Latin world, amazing woman. And then when I think of the men, actually it's ironic because with this company, and I actually said this yesterday, I want to be number 5 on this list. When I first met my coach Matilda, my career coach, I told her the 3 men that are inspiring me are Walt Disney, Dr. Seuss, and Chuck Jones. And I told her why. And then last year, before I got laid off, I had Fred Rogers to that list. And I said to her today, we had a session before I came out here, and I said, oh my God, it's so ironic that the 3 of them were there from the very beginning, and I've just added on. And now I'm like, screw it, I want to be number 5. Like, I want to be that one. Like, I want to inspire. And so I think I agree with what you both said. Like, you do need someone to inspire for. And I know I've had some times in my personal network where one of my girlfriends says to me, I want to be you. And I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, are you sure? But then again, when I hear that, I think of where I was before I met my career coach, before I met people like you and Brandon. And that's where the help comes in. Like, I think you're good at doing this too, Brandon, is that's where I'm like, start asking the questions. 'Cause like you said, it can be overwhelming. Like, because you think about what comes first. And because there's no guidebook to being an entrepreneur, because we're all different.
We gotta make one though, seriously.
Yeah, no, seriously. No, because like Brandon, for example, like we had a call about an email list one time, and his styles, and I learned, I'm like, okay, he does it this way, I do it this way. And that's how I learn as well, as observing, and we all do something a little different. So whenever I talk to someone, I try to do what my coach did with me on our very first session, is kind of dig and be like, okay, why, what's important. And then what I try to do with my coach Matilda does with me too, is we break it down to simple steps. And that's part of the struggle too, because like I've been so scared to have gatherings, and now I'm starting to have gatherings.
You're pushing yourself.
Yeah, but it's like I talked to Brandon about it a lot. I was like, Brandon, you always have these gatherings, like how do you do it? What do you do? And like actually you were very generous and sharing me the number of people you have on your email list. And so Brandon also provided me data on the algorithms. Like there's this rule where we go to a networking group often with Joe Applebaum. Right? LinkedIn influencer. Like I love his meetups. But he said, if I want to be on 5 sales calls a day, I'll send at least 100 emails for just thinking of one day alone. And then when you shared with me your numbers, I was like, okay, it makes sense. So when I send out my blog and I'm seeing, okay, this many people opened it up, I'm like, okay, I'm writing about the right stuff.
The right thing.
And so I think the guidelines come from the algorithms, but then you have to have flexibility, because like I always joke, because I'm a type A by nature, but when I'm around people like you that are really chill and easygoing, or Brandon's pretty easygoing too, I'm like, I actually gravitate towards people opposite of me. But you learn when you're open to it. You learn like, oh, it's okay. Let's just go with the flow. Let's just like see how this works.
And you could. And as we close, I want to give. I appreciate you sharing that. But I want to in closing for this podcast, and I want to say I want you guys back on. We could talk so much more about these things. I want Brandon and you briefly as well to share something quick that the viewers, as someone who's maybe an entrepreneur or is an entrepreneur or wants to get into it. What is your advice that you want to leave them with? And to me, my advice for people is just be open-minded, being open to new experiences. And speaking of networking groups, I think I maybe mentioned it to you guys. Yeah. I created a group called Vibe Out. And a lot of networking groups, they're focused, which is really important, on networking, getting business, getting connections, which is still part of my group. But the focus of Vibe Out is going to be focused on mental health of an entrepreneur. And it's closed off right now because I want to test the waters, and I have a lot of people interested, which is I'm very grateful. But I wanted to create a platform and a place where we can meet virtually, but also as a hybrid in person, and talk. How are we doing today? Forget about the money, the business. How's your mental health routine? How's your self-care going? How are you feeling? You feeling depressed? You feeling anxious? I want to talk about the stuff that we're not talking about enough. So if you guys are watching this and you're interested, to learn more about the group in the coming weeks and months. I'm going to kind of open and expand it and do more with it. As we know, the life entrepreneur, we juggle a lot of different things. So if you are interested in that group, let me know. And briefly, I'm going to leave it to these two wonderful people to leave you with anything. It could be a sentence, it could be a word, it could be anything. A body language, a silly face, whatever you want.
Yeah, sure. Just one quick thing. Getting back to what you said about being open-minded, there's a very good quote. The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open.
You told me that one. I like that a lot.
So I forgot who said that, but somebody said it, obviously, because I'm saying it now.
You're that somebody.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Maybe.
Gotcha.
Appreciate that.
But I guess one piece of advice that I would give to people who want to be an entrepreneur and people who are, and just in regards to Paul's podcast, just take advice from people who are successful and they are where you want to be in life, basically. So
perfect. Appreciate that. Absolutely. And Kristina, please briefly share anything that you would like to leave the viewers with.
Sure. I think find your story. And don't be afraid to tell your story, because I think for the three of us, we each have a story. Like, you're very passionate about cultural, you're very passionate about vibes. And if you stick to your story, yes, your elevator pitch, yes, your brand message may change. But for me, I'm a storyteller. So that's like why I say I feel strong about stories. But I think if you find that storyline, that niche, and you and let everything else evolve around it. And lastly, it's actually evolved my message on my website. I want to share a Brene Brown quote. We are all designed to love, be loved, and belong.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to have these two wonderful people on. I'm also going to leave links in the description of the last two podcasts I was on with these individuals. And please be sure to subscribe, follow, and if you have different topics that you want the three of us to go talk about in a future podcast, please let us know. Be sure to follow their awesome Instagram pages. Let's send some good vibes to the viewers. Thank you so much for watching, and look forward to the next podcast.
Thank you so much.
In a podcast, now it's full throttle. Life is never hollow, but if you ever feel twisted or need to be lifted, yo, my man is gifted.